God bless you. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, we're looking at verses 18 through to 23, about 4 to 5 verses there. This particular passage is looking at hard work and wealth, but even the hard work that one does and the wealth that one may accumulate, that fails, and it is rather meaningless. It's nice to know that we could work hard. You could work hard. You could be a very, very hard worker. And your family is living comfortably. You're making sure, very much so, that the home, the house, the property that you have, the wealth, such as you may have a few bits of gold, you will have the monies in the account, they have no need for much. And you could say, well, you are settled and your wife and your children are comfortable and will be comfortable. But even then still, it's like grasping after the wind, feeding the wind, meaningless. Can you imagine? But let's see what Solomon says in these six verses of Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 18. And if you've noticed, I've been reading from the Jewish text, which is very quite clear, very plain. I love the King James Version. But right now, we need to hear the clearness of what Solomon, the preacher, the teacher, is saying, he's preaching, what instructions he's leaving to us. Can you imagine those who were sitting around Solomon? Can you imagine the attentiveness that they had, or that Solomon saw of those who were with him? Can you imagine? I can imagine, but then I can't imagine, because really, right here as I read, all of my senses really are here, trying to listen and understand and grasp what Solomon is leaving or saying to me, never mind to all of us. So, reading from verse 18 of chapter 2 of Ecclesiastes, he says, I hated all the things for which I worked under the sun, because I saw that I would have to leave them to the man who will come after me. Who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool? Yet he will have control over all the things I worked for, and which demonstrated how wise I am under the sun. This too is pointless. Thus, I came to despair over all the things I had worked for under the sun. Here is a man whose work is done with wisdom, knowledge, and skill. Yet he has to leave it to someone who has put no work into it. This is not only pointless, but a great evil. For what does a person get from all his effort and ambition permeating the work he does under the sun? Verse 3. His whole life is one of pain, and his work is full of stress. Even at night, his mind gets no rest. This too is pointless. How true a word that is. Many a man, they work, they have their possessions, they have their wealth, yet they have no sleep because they're wondering and worrying about the wealth that they have accumulated. But there are three things here that Solomon wants to leave with us. I'm going to touch on them briefly. You have all the time in the world after I have finished to go back. You may find more than three, and there'll be other nuggets there that you can look at, and the Lord can even allow you to see even more, far more deeply than what it is that I or any other person would want to share um, at the moment that you are studying. But there are three reasons here, or there are 3 points that we can see straight off. Reason number one is a person's success and wealth must be left to others. Can you imagine? A person's success and wealth must be left to others. Solomon despised the fruit of his labor because it would all be left to others after his death. Everything that Solomon had labored for, all his houses, all the land that he had, the farms and ranches that he possessed, the livestock, the sheep, the goat, the cows, the camels, the horses, all that he had, the public works that he did in the city of Jerusalem. And I wouldn't even only say Jerusalem, but probably up and down the countryside or even in certain cities in Israel, the orchards, the gardens that he had would be left behind for someone else to receive. Consider that even for yourself. You may not have as much as Solomon, but what you have, what I have, we love and we care for very much. How would you feel for someone to come along? Could be a son, a daughter, it could be a grandchild that would come and possess all of that and then squander it. We hear of it almost all the time. Sons and daughters go after that which the parents have left. They fight, they squabble over it. It's pointless, isn't it? The parents themselves, that's an expression is said amongst the West Indians. I'm sure in other cultures they have similar things to say that the father or the mother is turning in their graves now over what the children or grandchildren have done or are doing to that which they labored and worked so hard for. Many a family, many a family have been destroyed, come to naught, all because of that which one party or one individual has worked so hard for. They cared for it while they lived. They looked after it. It probably gained in value. And all of that, people would come and comment so much about what was left or what they had, what was, but yet after death, all of these things really come to naught. Solomon painfully realized that if such a fool were allowed or were to follow him as king, all of his efforts, the good he had done, and all the wise decisions he had made would be for nothing. Such a person would squander and ultimately lose what his predecessor had gained through hard work, smart decisions. It made all that he had labored for meaningless, empty, and vain. How do you feel now? If you could look into the future and see what your child or what your grandchild, or it could even be your husband or your wife, if you could see what would happen to all that you've labored for, come to know, what would you do? Truthfully, what would you do? The second point here of what the teacher, the preacher wants to leave is that a person's work can cause despair. It can, and a person's wealth is meaningless. All what we grab for, all that we're reaching for, all the fame, all the wealth, all the notoriety that we're having in this world, if we as men, as mere men, I'm using men now as a corporate word for male and female, if we could see what was going to be done or said or handled after our demise, after we're expired, what would we do? What would you do? What would I do? I don't know. Probably I would stop working right now because it's going to be destroyed. It just causes me despair. Probably, I just don't know. Probably it's a good thing that we don't know the future. Probably we just do not know the future. But I could imagine Solomon. It wore a heavy, very heavy burden on his mind, day and night, and he couldn't escape it. It was despairing for him, and it led him into despair. The word Ya'ish communicates despondency and hopelessness to the point of taking desperate actions to escape it. Verse, let's look at verse 20. Therefore I went about to cause my heart to despair. Yash, or Yash, Yash, despair of all the labor which I took under the sun. Verse 20. Let me read that from the Jewish text. It says here, thus I came to despair over all the things I had worked for under the sun. Thus I came to despair over all the things I had worked for under the sun. He was at the point of taking desperate action. Could it be that Solomon had contemplated taking his own life because of this? Ecclesiastes bears out that he wanted to do everything he could to avoid death. I don't think that he wanted to take his life, but just like how mankind, even today, I don't know if you really recognize through the sciences, certain areas of science, of what mankind is trying to do. Man is trying to beat death. Mankind is trying to escape death. So it's not that I believe that the teacher, the preacher here, who is Solomon, is trying to say that he despaired life to the point that he wanted to commit suicide or to take his own life. But I believe in all of his searching, in all of his inquiring, in all of his learning, he wanted to find a way to beat death. What a thing. Nonetheless, desperation over what would become of his kingdom played the teacher. It played the preacher, the king, incessantly. And the third point I want to bring, and the last one here, is a person's estate may be left to a lazy or indulgent individual. Can you imagine you buying a property or putting up a business or whatever it is that's within your estate? You worked hard to secure yourself. You worked hard for your children, your grandchildren, not anymore to be in poverty. That's where you're coming from. To be in need of anything, to be in want of anything, because everything has been laid out for you, and the next person to come along to squanders it as if it's always been there. Think about it for a while. We've seen people, we've seen individuals. I'm thinking of one right now where his father, and his parents, let me say his parents, came from a very humble beginning, started a business, very successful in his business, very much known amongst individuals. I knew the individual. I'm not talking about someone that I've heard of. I knew the individual, very successful, had money. But it wouldn't seem that he did, but he did. Unfortunately, the father died. He had two sons, and one was very successful himself, very much so in the area of business. The other one, it just looks like as if the wealth and the money was there just for him. Nothing really came of him. But how would his father now and his mother look on it? I think they'll be very disappointed. How they worked, they toiled, they struggled. They made sure that their children were looked after. They made sure that their children uh, didn't have anything or had what they needed in order to be accepted, to be well placed in society, and they were. So they turned the tables turned. Solomon looked beyond his lifetime and imagined the future of his estate. He was even further troubled by the thought that all that he had gained might be possessed by a lazy man who did not earn it. Was he looking on his son? Was he looking and thinking of his children? We know that one of his sons, um, Rehoboam, was going to take over from him. Was he a lazy man? Was he one that was indulgent? We don't know. We just don't know. We can see, and because if you know that the son that took over from Solomon, his actions and his thought, does it fall within that? Was Solomon really afraid that Rehoboam was going to do what he did? We just don't. But all of this again is vanity, vain, emptiness, wasted, it's meaningless, clutching, reaching on wind, feeding on wind, nothing to be gained under the sun, just misery, just despair. What do you have? How do you feel about your life, about your family, or what you're doing? I'm not going to tell you not to stop. No, you work, you continue working, you continue doing what you need to do for yourself, for your family, and for your uh, for the family that is to come. But do it for the right reason. Do it so that God will be glorified. But He must be glorified. It is all down to God. It is all about Him, really. If we are doing this thing just so that we are pleased and our family not in need and to make them feel comfortable, that's good. If what we do is to act unto the Lord, then that's all that we need. God. That's all that we need. All that they need.